We had a recent move out, and you guys, the place was not cleaned at all. The fridge and the dishwasher looked like someone had poured cleaning product down the front of it and then just walked away without wiping it up. The dryer was full of lint, never had been wiped down. The shower had hair inside of it. It had hair outside of it. The sink had toothpaste stains everywhere. The windows and blinds were absolutely covered in dust and grime. Now, in California, per law, landlords are required to provide an itemized list of deductions and documentation when withholding from a security deposit, with photos. In California, it is now law that landlords have to take photos before a tenant moves in and after they move out. Now, that law passed about 18 months ago. And I'll tell you, it was like, oh, come on. You got to be kidding me with this stuff. But that last exiting tenant told us that they had cleaned. And because we had those before and after photos, then with the after cleaning photos, they could see a clear difference and not argue about the funds being deducted. We were able to collect a few $100 from that security deposit to do the cleaning that was needed. And you can't argue with photo evidence, you guys. It's a little more work, but it makes your case a slam dunk when you have that proof. Welcome to Your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is Your Landlord Resource Podcast. Hey there, landlords. Welcome back to the Your Landlord Resource Podcast, the podcast where we help self-managing landlords like you run your rental property business with confidence and professionalism. I'm Stacy Casella. I'm here with my co-host and my ever so wonderful husband, Kevin Kilroy. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Though I will admit, I had to spend some time this morning going through the marketing photos for that 2-bedroom unit that is once again on the market. So my brain is already in landlord mode.
Yeah. Yes, guys, you heard that right. We seem to really be having a problem getting our 2-bedroom unit that's in Sacramento rented to a qualified tenant. We had gone through all the way to lease approvals, and for some reason, one applicant just really had a very hard time responding and communicating with us. So we pulled out of the deal and we're starting over.
Right. And I actually feel really bad for the other tenant who was really on it. But the person they were moving in with just could not get their act together when we asked them to do, basic things. There was a 1.5 day delay in submitting their application after the other roommate. And then we got the application, but no supporting documentation, so we had to wait another day for that. We go through the whole process of getting the apps approved, and we're prepping the lease, and we needed to know what their move-in date was going to be. The one that was on top of things got back right away with his answer, but the other prospect never even responded. Then we create the lease and email it out to them both for their approval. And we do this so that we are all clear on such things as dates, rental rates, security deposits, etc. So this was on a Wednesday. Of course, we get a response right away from the one, and the other one, crickets. So Friday morning, we text asking for the other tenant's approval, and they tell us they never received the lease.
Which I'll admit, I did mess up on the email address there.
Okay, that's correct. But when the first text went out, letting them know you emailed the lease and to please review it and get their approval, don't you think sometime that day they could at least respond to let us know they hadn't received it? I mean, it was like pulling teeth with this person. They did respond that it had been received on Friday morning. So Friday night, again, Stacy emails them asking for their approval, asking them to respond by Saturday morning by 9 a.m. because we had a busy weekend and she'd like to get it sent out for the signatures. So they finally look at the lease and then text that they had responded to the email with a question. The question was asking, how would you handle getting out of a lease early if they had to? I kid you not.
Okay. So you guys, this is when I start to get that gut feeling that this person was having cold feet or something. So I answer the email back and I let them know that both tenants are responsible for the full amount of the rent until the end of the lease. And that if one person leaves early, the other person remaining will have to pay the full rental amount until the end of the lease. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what they thought I was going to say. And this was Friday night at like 9 o'clock at night. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., still no approval. And of course, at 10:20, Saturday morning, I get a text saying they had another question, asking if we give 24-hour notice before entry. And they went so far as to note the page and paragraph number of where it is discussed in our lease. That it did not specifically mention 24 hours, but that we will, in accordance with the law, give proper notice. But wait, there's more. They then requested that we actually rewrite that section to include the 24 hours.
All right, at this point, I was ready to tell them to take a hike. In no uncertain terms would we be rewriting the body of our lease to basically say actual words that they need to see, when it already says that we will follow the law.
Right. So I will say I did not respond right away, partially because at this point, I wanted to end it to move on, and partially also because I told them I needed to know by 9 a.m., and I did not hear by then, so now they have to wait. And on Monday, I responded to their question about the 24-hour notice, letting them know that we usually give more than 24 hours notice, and only if there's an emergency or an urgent need to enter the unit would we do so with less than 24 hours notice. And no, we will not rewrite our lease to accommodate their need to see it. So Monday night, 9:57, I get a text saying that they're good to move forward. Tuesday morning, first thing, I send the lease for signatures through DocuSign. And if you've ever used DocuSign, it literally takes 30 seconds to process signatures on a lease. And you guys, we have a lot of initials and signatures, and it really does take less than a minute to get this done. The other tenant, who has been great about communicating, texts on Tuesday early afternoon that the lease has been signed on their behalf. To which I respond, great, just waiting for the other tenant to sign, and then I will sign. And again, no response. Wednesday morning, I text asking, when will they be signing? They finally respond and say, I will sign it today. So we're like, great, let's get this thing completed. No signatures that day. This is still Wednesday. They got the lease Tuesday morning. So on Thursday, I guess you could say, I woke up with a bee in my bonnet because I texted them and told him, and I'm paraphrasing here, we have been more than patient, but the time delays in our communication have been very frustrating for us, and that we are moving on. I said a few other things, and then I wished them both the best of luck in finding their new home.
Of course, Stacy disabled the lease on DocuSign, and right away they come back and ask her to reinstate it, that they will sign it right now. And I was so proud of her, she held her ground and did not respond to them.
Well, I mean, I responded when the other person texted individually asking for us to reconsider. And I do feel bad for this person because they really had done everything right. I mean, except for choose a roommate who did not consider the importance of prompt communication with the landlord. But my response to them was this. So-and-so's response time communication from the beginning made this experience very frustrating. We value the landlord-tenant relationship, and for us, communication is a very important part of that. So, you guys, this had me in a funk all day. The total time of this process to get them approved was over 3 weeks. 3 weeks! And the lease was never signed. We're usually in the 48-hour approval with signature within 72. So anyway, we need to repost our ad on Zillow, and that's why Kevin was looking at the photos to make sure all was well there. And it's actually perfect timing because today's episode is kind of a shop talk, right? One of our shorter, more focused episodes where we just dig into one topic and we give you some really practical, usable information. And today we are talking about rental property photos. Now, I know that some of you might be thinking, photos? Really? Isn't that kind of obvious? And yeah, on the surface, it seems basic. But you guys would be so surprised at how many landlords either skip photos altogether, maybe take a few blurry shots with their phone and call it a day, or, this one gets me, they only think about photos when they're marketing the vacancy. And here's the truth. Photos are one of the most powerful, lowest cost tools that you can have in your landlord toolkit. Not just for marketing, though that matters a lot, but for legal protection, documentation, and honestly, for communicating the kind of landlord you are before a tenant even walks through the door. So today we're going to talk about why rental unit photos matter, when to take them, how to take them properly, whether or not you need to hire a professional photographer, and how photos can actually protect you legally when things go sideways. And trust me, things go sideways sometimes. Photos are one of the easiest things that landlords can do that dramatically improves their marketing and their documentation. So let's get to it. All right, so let's start with why rental property photos matter. And I want to kick this off with something that Kevin and I actually do when we're evaluating our rental rates. And I think this is going to click for a lot of you. When we're researching comparable rentals in our area to make sure that our pricing is competitive, we look at what other units are going for. But here's the thing. If a listing doesn't have photos, we skip it. We will not use that as a comparable. Because if we cannot tell how that unit stacks up against ours, what on earth makes you think a potential tenant scrolling through Zillow or apartments.com at 11 o'clock at night is going to stop and say, I wonder what this place looks like. Let me inquire. They're not. They're going to scroll right past it. People looking for rental properties, they scroll fast, really fast. And the platforms they're using, Zillow, apartments.com, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever, they're all visual. Your photos are the first impression that your property makes. And if that impression is bad, blurry, dark, or just absent, you've already lost that potential tenant before they even read your description. Listings with high-quality photos attract more clicks. They generate more showings, and they help justify your rental price. And that's not just common sense. Real estate marketing research consistently supports this. When photos are strong, they do the selling for you. They show natural light, room size, updated features, and the layout. They help a renter emotionally picture themselves living there. And that emotional connection, that's what gets people to book a showing. But here's an angle that I want you landlords to really think about. Your photos communicate your professionalism. When someone sees a clean, well-lit, thoughtfully photographed rental listing, they're going to read between the lines. They're going to think, this landlord cares about the property. This place is well-maintained. This is someone I want to rent from. And flip that around. Because when photos are poor or missing, some prospective tenants, and I'm talking about the ones who might try to push boundaries, they might actually see it as an opening. They start thinking, well, if this landlord doesn't care enough to take good photos, maybe they're going to overlook my less than perfect credit. Maybe they won't mind if I sneak in a dog. Maybe they're desperate to fill the unit and they won't hold me to that lease. And I know that sounds like a stretch, but we've heard these stories. The way that you present your property sets a tone for the entire landlord-tenant relationship from day one. So, good photos attract better tenants, they reduce vacancy time, and they establish your credibility as a professional landlord. It really is that important.
Stacy makes a really good point about the scrolling. I think people underestimate how quickly a renter's eyes glaze over when they're browsing listings. You've got maybe 2 seconds to grab their attention before they move on. And those 2 seconds are decided entirely by your photos. What I want to add here is the emotional side of it, because I think this is something landlords overlook when they're just trying to fill a unit fast. A rental listing isn't just a transaction. For that tenant, they're looking for a home, and photos are what help them feel that. When I look at our listings versus some of the competing units in our markets, I genuinely believe our photos make people feel like our units are worth the rent we're asking. Not because we have fancy properties, it's because we take the time to photograph them well and show them at their best. Think about the details that matters to renters. Is there good natural light? How big does the kitchen feel? What are the floors like? What does the bathroom actually look like? When you photograph thoughtfully, wide angles from doorways, lights on, clean, and if it's furnished, then staged, you're answering all those questions before they even have to ask. You're doing the work for them, and that makes your listing stand out. Full stop. And I'll also say, from a practical standpoint, once you have a great set of marketing photos for a unit, you can reuse them listing cycle after listing cycle, as long as the unit condition hasn't changed significantly. So the investment of time up front pays you back every single time you need to relist. All right, now let's talk about the part that I think most landlords don't fully appreciate until they've been burned. Photos are legal protection. This is where your camera roll stops being about marketing and starts being about money, and in some cases, about your sanity. Number one on the list is security deposit documentation. Before every single move-in, you need to photograph that unit thoroughly. And I mean thoroughly. Every room, every wall, every appliance, every floor, ceilings, cabinets, inside the refrigerator, inside the oven, the sink, the bathtub, the shower, inside closets, every angle of every room. Why? Because when a tenant moves out and there's damage, and sometimes there is, you will need to be able to prove two things. One, the damage wasn't there before they moved in, and two, it is there now after they moved out. Without photos, it's your word against theirs. And in small claims court, that rarely goes well for landlords. Time-stamped photos are your evidence. If a tenant claims that the dent in the refrigerator or scratch on the hardwood floor existed before they moved in, your move-in photos can prove otherwise. That's the ballgame right there. And it goes the other way too. Your move-in photos aren't just for catching problems, they're also proof of the positive condition you handed over. A spotless oven, gleaming windows, clean blinds, a freshly scrubbed bathroom. Those photos actually incentivize you as a landlord to make sure you're handing over a great unit because now you've got a record of it. It sets the standard. Now, the same principle applies to lease violations. If you discover unauthorized pets, unauthorized occupants, evidence of smoking, property damage, hoarding, photos document all of it. That documentation supports your notices to comply, your lease enforcement, and if it comes to it, your eviction case. Evidence matters in court, and photos are hard to argue with. And don't forget photo documentation of repairs. When you complete a repair and deduct the cost from a security deposit, photos before and after the repair prove that the issue existed that you addressed it, and that the cost was legitimate. Think of things like a hole in the drywall, a broken window, or water damage from an unreported plumbing leak. Before and after. Done.
All right. So Kevin laid out all the reasons that you should have photos for legal purposes. And now I want to share a real story from our own portfolio because this stuff is not theoretical. Now, this happened to us, and California law literally forced us into good documentation habits, and we're kind of glad it did. We had a recent move out, and you guys, the place was not cleaned at all. The fridge and the dishwasher looked like someone had poured cleaning product down the front of it and then just walked away without wiping it up. The dryer was full of lint, never had been wiped down. The shower had hair inside of it. It had hair outside of it. The sink had toothpaste stains everywhere. The windows and blinds were absolutely covered in dust and grime. Now, in California, per law, landlords are required to provide an itemized list of deductions and documentation when withholding from a security deposit, with photos. In California, it is now law that landlords have to take photos before a tenant moves in and after they move out. Now, that law passed about 18 months ago. And I'll tell you, it was like, oh, come on, when that law passed. You got to be kidding me with this stuff. But that last exiting tenant told us that they had cleaned. And because we had those before and after photos, then with the after cleaning photos, they could see a clear difference and not argue about the funds being deducted. We were able to collect a few $100 from that security deposit to do the cleaning that was needed. And you can't argue with photo evidence, you guys. It's a little more work, but it makes your case a slam dunk when you have that proof. Now, contrast that with a situation in one of our other markets in Idaho, where the property manager charges tenants a mandatory cleaning fee regardless of how they leave the unit. And honestly, Kevin and I are not fans of that approach, and here's why. When a tenant knows that they're already paying a cleaning fee no matter what, there is zero incentive for them to clean. And if someone has lived in a unit for several years, that flat cleaning fee is probably not going to come close to covering what it actually costs to deep clean that place. The fee goes up with time and condition, and a flat fee does not account for that. Some people are just not clean people, and I'll leave it at that. On the flip side, if the unit does come back clean and you've got a mandatory fee, then at least you have the funds to pay a professional cleaner to go through it regardless. And you guys, if you have a good cleaner, treat them well and do not lose them. I cannot stress this enough. Good, reliable cleaners are really hard to come by.
Yeah, and Stacy is pretty picky about cleanliness.
I am. I think it's gross when a place has not been cleaned for an incoming tenant. Whatever, moving on. All right, so when exactly should you be taking photos? There are 4 critical moments in the life cycle of a tenancy when your camera should be out. The first is before you market the unit. These are your listing photos. What the world sees when they find your rental on Zillow's or apartment.com or wherever you advertise it. The unit should be clean, empty, and showing as nicely as possible. You want good lighting, tidy space, wide angles. Now, these photos are your marketing tool, and Kevin's going to dig into the how part of taking them in just a moment. Now, the second, and this is arguably the most important, is before the tenant moves in. And I want to be very clear here. These are not the same as your marketing photos. Your marketing photos are meant to make the place look its best for potential renters. Your move-in documentation photos are meant to be thorough, systematic, and comprehensive. Like Kevin mentioned earlier, every room, every appliance, every wall, floors, ceilings, inside the closets, inside the cabinets, under your sinks. If you can see it, photograph it. The goal is to have an undeniable visual record of the condition of that unit at the exact moment that you hand over the keys. The third is during maintenance and repairs. Whenever you or a vendor goes into that unit to address a maintenance issue, you should photograph the damage or problem before the repair, during the repair, if it's a significant job, and after the repair is completed. Now, this protects you on multiple fronts. It documents that the issue existed, shows that you addressed it, and provides backup if a tenant ever disputes a deposit deduction for a repair-related charge. And the fourth time is after move-out. Walk that unit the same way you walked it at move-in and photograph everything the same way, room by room, angle by angle, because this is where the comparison happens. Your move-in photos and your move-out photos together tell an entire story. A good set of both can resolve a dispute before it ever becomes a legal issue. And if it does become a legal issue, you're walking in with evidence.
One of the most common questions landlords ask us is whether they need to hire a professional photographer or if their smartphone is good enough. And the honest answer is, it depends on what the photos are for. For documentation purposes, move in, move out, maintenance records, lease violation evidence, your smartphone is absolutely fine. In fact, your phone is ideal for this. It's quick, it's always with you, and most importantly, every photo is automatically timestamped, which is crucial for legal documentation. You don't need any fancy equipment to prove a unit was clean at move-in. You just need consistent, thorough photos taken with whatever you have in your pocket. Now, for marketing photos, the bar is slightly higher, but it doesn't always require a professional. Modern smartphones, especially newer models with wide-angle lenses, can take genuinely great listing photos if you know some basic techniques, and we'll cover those in a minute. The key things are good lighting, a clean and tidy space, shooting from doorways to capture the full room, and taking photos during daylight hours when natural light is doing the heavy lifting. Now, when does professional photography make sense? If you're renting a higher-end or luxury unit, if you're in a dense, competitive rental market where every advantage matters, if your property is a larger home versus a single apartment. These are all situations where professional photos can really move the needle. For furnished units like short-term or mid-term rentals, we would suggest hiring a professional so you can grab the attention of people who are looking for that perfect vacation home or a nomad looking for their next adventure. Professional photographers have better equipment, better editing, and they know how to make a space look its absolute best. They're especially worth it when you plan to stage the unit before shooting, much like you would when selling a home. Cost-wise, you're typically looking at somewhere in the range of $150 to $400, depending on your location and the size of the property. Now, that may sound like a lot until you do the math on vacancy costs. In most markets, one extra week of vacancy costs significantly more than a professional photo shoot. If better photos help you rent the unit 1 or 2 weeks faster, the photographer has already paid for themselves. Our personal approach? For most of our units, we handle photography ourselves. I take the listing photos, and Stacy, as you can tell, has strong opinions about quality. I use the wide-angle lens on my DSLR, make sure every light in the unit is on, and shoot during the day when natural light is coming in. It really works well for our properties. But I will say, if we were listing a higher-end property in a competitive market, I wouldn't hesitate to bring in a professional.
All right, let me jump in here real quick. Before hiring a professional, think about if you plan on doing any major upgrades to the property. And I say this because you don't want to take professional photos and have that tenant move out in a year, and then you decide, oh, now's the time to remodel the bathroom and install new flooring, because you're going to have to do those photos all over again.
Right. And conversely, if you just did a big renovation and do not plan on needing to update your units for many years, then maybe the cost of hiring a professional is warranted. All right, so let's get practical. Here's how to actually take great marketing photos of your rental unit. And most of this you can do right now with the phone in your hand. First, always shoot from doorways. Standing in the doorway of a room and shooting inward gives you the widest possible view of the space. It shows the full room, which helps renters understand the size and layout. It's the most natural vantage point, and it almost always looks better than shooting from inside the room. I like to use a tripod, and we will link the one I use in the show notes. But I like to use a tripod and have it set around 4 foot high. So think somewhere between your waist and your chest, depending on how tall you are. You can just pick it up and take it from room to room, and all photos are consistently the same height. Second, use natural light. Open every curtain and every blind before you start. Natural light makes spaces look bigger, warmer, and more inviting. Schedule your photo session during the day, ideally when the best light is hitting the unit. Third, turn on every single light in the unit. Even with natural light coming in, having overhead lights and lamps on fills in shadows and makes the space feel bright and livable. Fourth, please declutter your unit. Remove cleaning supplies, personal items, or anything that doesn't belong in a model unit. If you're between tenants, you've probably already got a clean slate. But if you're shooting while the unit is occupied for some reason, just clear everything off countertops and surfaces, because less is more. Fifth, make sure you photograph in all key areas. This means every appliance, every sink, every bathroom, every floor, windows, cabinets, the things renters actually care about. Don't take just a couple of wide shots and call it a day. Be comprehensive. And sixth, and this is the one people skip and then regret, organize your photo storage from day one. Set up a folder system on your cloud storage or in your property management software, organized by property address, unit number, and date. Something like the property address, then Unit A, then subfolders for Move-In 2026, Maintenance, Move-Out 2027. Something simple, consistent, and when you need to pull those photos 6 months later for a dispute, you can find them in 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes. We've got a full blog on tips for taking great rental photos over at yourlandlordresource.com. We will link that in the show notes. And if you want to go deeper on marketing your rental property overall, check out episode 23, where we do a full breakdown on that topic. You can give that a listen to by going to yourlandlordresource.com/episode 23. We will link that in the show notes as well.
All right, I have one more quick but important thing to cover before we close this out. Let's talk about photos versus videos for documentation purposes. Some landlords have started doing video walkthroughs at move-in and move-out. And while video can be a great supplement, here's something you need to know. Some small claims courts actually prefer still photos over video when it comes to reviewing evidence. And you guys, the reason's pretty straightforward. A photo is easy to review. A judge or a magistrate can look at it instantly and compare it to the other photo side by side. A video requires a device for someone to watch it on, find the relevant timestamp, and assess what they're seeing in real time. And it's harder to manage in a court setting. Depending on the judge, it may not be admitted or considered as readily as a clear timestamp photo. Our recommendation is always to prioritize still photos. Build your documentation process around photos. And if you want to also do a video walkthrough for your own records or to share with a tenant as part of your move-in process, go for it. That's a great practice. But don't let video replace your photos. They should complement each other, not substitute for one another. And besides, many rental listing sites have become very finicky about posting videos. So Kevin uses something called a gimbal, which allows him to use his smartphone and slowly walk from room to room and record without the video coming across as shaky or bouncy. We can link that in the show notes too if you'd like to check it out. We also have a YouTube video where we show Kevin using it and then what the finished product looks like. So we will link that as well. But we still do a video for each unit, and we offer it to potential tenants when we're scheduling the walkthrough. And it's good for two reasons. One, to send it, we need their email or their phone number. And that allows us to get off the rental site, let's say Zillow, and it allows us to communicate more one-on-one. The other reason it is good is that if a person is on the fence about the property, the video is going to show them a more live view for them to know if they want to move forward with that showing. The more they know before they come, the better. It won't waste your time or theirs doing a showing of a unit that ultimately does not work well for them. Okay, so let's finish this up. Here are your key takeaways from today's quote-unquote shop talk. Rental property photos aren't just for marketing, although they do absolutely matter for marketing. They attract better tenants, they reduce your vacancy time, they justify your rental price, and they communicate professionalism before the tenant even contacts you. Photos are legal documentation. Move-in photos, move-out photos, maintenance photos, these are your evidence when disputes arise. And disputes do arise. Timestamp, organized, and comprehensive photo records can be the difference between winning and losing a security deposit claim or supporting a lease violation notice. There are 5 potential times you should always have your camera out. Always before marketing, before move-in, during repairs, and after move-out. And then, potentially, after any post-move-out repairs to prove you repaired the damages that you charged their security deposit for. Your smartphone is perfectly adequate for documentation. For high-end listings or competitive markets, professional photography is worth considering and often pays for itself in reduced vacancy time. Shoot from doorways, use natural light, turn on all the lights, declutter, cover all the key areas, and organize your storage system from day one. And remember, prioritize still photos over video for legal documentation purposes. Again, for more on this topic, check out our blog post on tips for taking great rental property photos linked in the show notes, and head back to episode 23 for our full episode on marketing your rental property. You guys, if you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with another landlord who could use it. We genuinely appreciate every share and every review. It helps us reach more self-managing landlords who need this kind of content. And as always, you've got this.